I just like it, so I said, oh, why not?
Okay. Well, it's right up your alley then.
Okay. Well, I'm going to go ahead and get us started since everybody's got their snacks and sat down. But welcome to Ratio Christian. My name is Evan Fisher. I'm the president of Ratio Christian. We have a couple announcements, and then we will introduce our wonderful speaker. President's Day. This is next week, next Monday. If you didn't know, there is no school that day, so don't show up. We are also not going to be having Ratio Christian because I have a feeling not many people would show up. Although we do have wonderful snacks, so maybe some people would show up. I'd show up. March 12th, we have a climbing night through the rec center that is right over there. From 8 to 10, there is going to be free shoe and harness rentals, and the climbing wall will be open for us. So we will be able to climb. There's going to be one other club there. I'm not sure which club it is, but we will be able to go there, climb for free. It is wonderful. It is really fun. And if you've never climbed before, I'd recommend doing it. They have a really nice wall, and they have a lot of easy runs. They have a lot of hard runs. So
well, I think they'll provide some technical assistance as well.
They will provide some technical assistance as well. But regardless of where you're at, if you are at all interested, please feel free to stop by. That is March 12th, 8 to 10. February 23rd, that is going to be, what is it? 2 weeks from today. That is after President's Day. The following meeting that we're going to be having, we're going to have a Woody's night. Because if you didn't know, Woody's is a pizza place down in downtown Golden. They have a wonderful deal on Monday nights where if you're a college student, you get a discount on their all-you-can-eat buffet. They have pizza, soups, drinks, all sorts of wonderful stuff. So that's going to be after the meeting on the 23rd. So if you're interested, please come. We don't feel like going there and eating alone, so I hope some of you will join us. And then we have the Ratio Christian Lending Library. We have a big old box full of Ratio Christi. The organization has booklets that are short, no more than 50 pages, very easy to read, and they just provide a little bit of explanation on different apologetic topics and different background on topics. We are getting that set up currently. If you're interested in looking at any of the books or possibly checking one out, please feel free to stop up here and bother any of the leaders, and we'll be happy to help you with that. We have a group meet. If you're not already in it, please feel free to join it. We do not spam you. We just send out a message every day that we're either tabling out on campus or we're having a meeting. We tell you what the meeting's about, what to expect, who's going to be talking. So if you want to know that beforehand, please join the group meet, and you can get all that information. We also have a YouTube channel. So we record all of the meetings that we have up until a couple of years ago. But if you're interested in either going back and looking at some of the older meetings we had, if you're not familiar, we had Daryl Doima come and talk on Tolkien. He did a whole class on that. But just Tolkien in the Bible, that whole side of things. If you're interested in looking at that, it's on our YouTube channel. We'll also be posting our current meetings, usually the day after or the day of the meeting. Afterwards. So if you want to go back and look back on what somebody said or a question that you thought was really interesting, that is available to you. And without further ado, I will pray us in and then welcome our very own Carl to talk about meals. Lord, I just thank you for tonight and that you have given us a space that we get to talk about this. I just thank you that we get to dive into intelligent design and the complexities of your creation. And I just pray that you'd give us ears to hear and a mind to think of good questions, that we can have good discussion here tonight and really get to learn something about what you've created. In Jesus' name, amen.
Good, thanks. So I'm Carl Christianssen, and for those of you who don't know me, I'm the assistant chapter director under Donald for this club. But otherwise, I am a professor over at Colorado Christian University, where I teach gen ed science class and I teach a biology class there. My educational background, I have a degree in wildlife biology, and then I got a master's degree in entomology. My research in entomology was with everyone's favorite insect, the mosquito. The mosquito. Right? Well, so realize a lot of entomological research is about killing insects, not just studying them. So unfortunately, we're not studying insects or mosquitoes tonight. I mean, maybe another night we'll do mosquitoes. They are kind of interesting. But tonight, we're going to be focusing on beetles, because there's some interesting aspects about beetles that's very challenging. But there's an interesting intersection that we're going to be taking a look at tonight. And the intersection is actually between entomology, insects, origami, and engineering. Let's think about origami first of all. So origami is actually a paper folding. The origins are a little fuzzy. We typically think about it as being Japanese and Chinese, but there's also some influences from Europe that we see. So the first known indications of origami appeared to us in the late 1700s, late 18th century. But in the late 1800s, we see some evidence in Germany where they're doing some of the same kind of things. And the whole idea behind origami is that you're creating particular shapes only by folding. Now, there are other paper crafts that will allow you to do gluing and cutting and things like this, but the thing that's particular to origami is you can only fold the paper. And so sometimes it can be very, very simple. You've probably all seen the famous crane, right? And people do those over and over again. But some can be very, very complex. So here's this samurai warrior, and this structure was done only by folding of paper. So they can be very, very complex. So what has become of interest in engineering is there are a number of different kinds of problems to be solved where engineers have looked to origami as a way of getting a solution. Probably the most high-profile one has been with satellite technology. So we want to put a satellite out in space, and you have to power the satellite. How do you power it?
Solar panels.
Solar panels. But the more you want your satellite to do, the bigger your solar panel needs to be. Now, how do you launch a satellite with a solar panel without having the solar panels ripped apart? The answer is fold them up. And then when you get it out into its location in space, then you unfold the solar panel. And they used origami to figure out how to do that. So there was this cross conversation between engineers and people who are into paper folding. But folding has an even more ancient origin than a human origin, and it has to do with beetles. So let me just show you a quick clip here about some beetles that are, in this case, unfolding their wings. So notice what's happening there. You've got these wings, front wings that are popping up, and their hind wings are unfolding, which means they first had to be folded. All right. So actually, engineers have even turned to insects in looking at the problem of folding. How can we fold things up efficiently, and how can we deploy them as well? Not just how do you get things folded up, but how do you unfold them? So we're going to be taking a look at beetles a little bit. So we're going to do a kind of quick overview about beetles, so we kind of understand what we're talking about. So when we're thinking about beetles, how do they kind of rank amongst living things? So if we just think about eukaryotic organisms that have cells with a nucleus. So there are 1.8 million described species of eukaryotic organisms. Amongst those, 1 million of them, well over half, are insects. Then within insects, there are about 350,000 described species of insects. People would say it's easily closer to 500,000. Now here in North America, we whittled that down to only 25,000 species. So where do you think a high percentage of those 350,000 beetles are?
Amazon.
Yeah, down in rainforest kind of areas, okay? So here in North America, and so then in Colorado, about 110 species of beetles here in Colorado. But you can see how diverse they are as a taxonomic group. Very colorful, they vary in size a lot. Some beetles are this big, and some are this big. So they vary in size quite a bit. So now, what makes a beetle a beetle? So one of the features that we notice is that a high percentage of insects have 2 pairs of wings. So we say forewings and hind wings. The forewings of beetles are hardened. It's like a shell-like structure called an elytra. And so then the hind wings then have to be folded up underneath the elytra, and then these wings can be used for flight. There are some beetles who just don't use hind wings at all, but most beetles do and engage in some kind of flight. So what is the benefit of doing this? Because obviously this is very successful, right? If a high percentage of insects are beetles, what is it about having this kind of arrangement that's beneficial? Any thoughts? Yeah.
They're waterproof.
Okay, well, they are waterproof, but in fairness to other insects, the wings of other insects actually are structurally designed to be waterproof. They will shed water off of them. Yeah.
So the elytra will protect the wings when it's not flying?
Yes? Why would you want to do that?
Because if you rely on flight and your wing gets damaged from something out, like you're basically dead.
Okay, but what would endanger the wings of a beetle so much that it would be a benefit to have them with a hard protective shell?
Predator?
Not so much predators, because we have to keep in mind you have 700,000 other insects that don't have this and they're doing quite well.
Air resistance?
Huh?
Air resistance?
Well, so actually there's a negative effect of this. Beetles are not elegant flyers. So we think about dragonflies, for instance, who are very agile and can go up and down and backwards and chase after all kinds of things. Beetles are not that. So by having this kind of structure, they actually are giving up, in a sense, some flight ability.
They have a much bigger wingspan or wing area than you'd expect for an insect that size.
Well, they do, partly because they're giving up some aerodynamic space, right? Normally, if you've got a forewing and a hind wing, you've got all 4 wings that are creating lift for the insect.
Like a dragonfly.
But, like a dragonfly. But these guys, all of that gets transferred to the hind wings.
Okay.
So those front shells have no flight capability. Isabella?
Does it keep them from like getting caught in things when they're flying through
Like the foliage or?
Okay, so yeah, I think you're kind of starting to hit on it. This has to do, we have to think about where insects go. And one of the main benefits is it allows this particular kind of insect to go places where other insects can't go. Because if they did, they would damage their wings. So think about beetles that live under the bark of trees. They burrow in, right? Or they dig underground. They dig burrows underground. Well, if you had exposed wings, you'd be in trouble. So there's a definite benefit. It allows these insects to access niches that other insects can't. So it's a definite benefit. But like I said, there is a cost to this. You are no longer the agile flyer that you once were, but you can still use flight for dispersal to go other places. So there's a kind of, we always have to think in terms of cost-benefit analysis, right? So here's the case I want to make tonight, and then we'll work through this. The case is this, that this whole business of being able to do wing folding, so both the structure, we're going to think of how are these things built in order to do this, and then what are the mechanisms that allow them to fold the wing up, that these defy any kind of evolutionary explanation, where we have just gradual change over time could lead to something like this. And that a better explanation is an intelligent agent. There is a mind behind this that can have forethought, insight, to be able to create these structures and mechanisms to allow beetles to do this. So realize what we're doing here when we're thinking this is an intelligent design argument, and this is a evaluation on a scientific basis. So we want to be careful what we're, recognize what we're doing and what we're not doing here. We're taking a look at some good scientific observation, notice what we're seeing here, and thinking about what best explains that. This is not God of the gaps, where we say, well, we have no idea where this came from, therefore God. That's not what we're doing here. We're going to be taking a look at some features here that can help us directly point to an intelligent agent. Now, in doing that, so we're making a scientific argument here, not a religious argument. However, we recognize that such an argument does have religious implications. But that should not keep it from being a scientific argument. Scientific argument is about looking at observations and drawing conclusions from nature. Okay, you with me there? Okay, so let's kind of walk through a couple things in terms of just the structures. So the elytra, first of all, one of the things we noticed is that if you look at this picture here, these have no resemblance to other insect wings. Notice the kind of thinness of the wings, the wing venation. We don't see any of that here. It's very, very different in terms of overall structure. And then the way that they articulate with the body is very, very different than wings. And we can't do the deep dive on there. But notice what's happening with the elytra, that when they open up, they're kind of flipping up and forward over the wing. This is not how wings typically move. Okay, wings, when insects are in flight, they're going to do like a figure 8 kind of motion. So something like this. So they're flapping their wings like this to fly. They're not doing this. Okay, so it's a very different kind of motion. And then the elytra actually have caught quite a bit of attention of engineers, especially people who are on the material science side of things. Because one of the things they notice with the structure of the elytra is that they can endure quite a bit or tolerate a lot of point pressure and then spring back into shape. So this could be a good material application for a lot of things. So how can we, of course, we always say the best engineer will just copy what's already been figured out in nature, right? So there's a lot of scientists who are taking a look at this as a material. Could this be useful to us? So the interesting thing, or the problem then, or not the problem, but the benefit to this is to prevent that damage to the hind wings, like we said before. Okay? The problem, though, is that because those elytra are not used for flight, like we said, the demands for flight have to shift to those hind wings. So what happens to the size of the hind wing? Because typically, in an insect, the front wings, the forewings, are much, much larger than the hind wings. But if you're going to shift the load of flight to the hind wings, what has to become of the hind wings?
They have to get bigger.
They have to get a lot bigger. Now, so if you look at this diagram here, insects, when they are at rest, usually in some way are going to move their wings just to lay them over the back of the abdomen, all right? But if you've extended the size of this, notice if you were just to have this wing and just fold it over the abdomen, where is it? It's way down here, right? And this elytra is covering just the abdomen. You with me? So if all we had was this hardened elytra folding over here, we'd still have the wing out back here, and the flying wing would be damaged. No wing. So to solve that problem, what do we do with this wing? Well, we need to fold it up and get it under this. So we've got to make it smaller. Oops. So this is some researchers who've been studying this kind of activity. So this is a rove beetle. They have an extra small elytra. Notice their elytra does not cover the abdomen, but notice what they're doing with the wing. Okay, watch that again. So we see how long the wing is. It's almost to the end of the abdomen. It's using its abdomen to take the wing and fold it up. And push it underneath the elytra. Pretty fascinating. So here's the thing. So there are some researchers at the University of Tokyo. They're the ones that shot these videos. So what they did is they used this slow motion photography. So what you were seeing there was in slower motion. The actual time for them to be able to fold up the wings and get it under the elytra was less than 2 seconds. So it's a very, very fast mechanism. And so what they did is they took a look at how these wings were folding. This is where they turned to origami. And they figured out, okay, how does the rove beetle fold up this wing? How can we best describe it? And to describe it, they used origami. And this is coming from a journal article that these guys wrote. And so I'm gonna have you guys give your hand at this, okay? So, let me, and I don't know if you wanna work with a partner or be independent. I've got quite a few pages here. Can we just be partners? I'll let you be partners, because then you can kind of talk it out.
Alright.
You wanna come over here and you
So,
guys can work
Do we
together?
need scissors for this?
You will, hang on. You're getting ahead of me here.
Scissor safety. Assuming these are from.
You wanna come over here and work with her?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Now, what you are gonna do, I'm gonna give you scissors in a second here.
Oh, he
So
said he's
I'm
gonna
gonna give you the directions for this, I'm not gonna just make you go blind here, okay? And trying to figure this out on your own, yeah, give it your best shot.
Good luck. They're dealing with the dotted lines.
So,
But I figured
yeah, let me hand these out
it means something.
so I can explain a little bit what you're looking at here. Okay, so you are gonna cut out this wing, and then you're gonna follow, there's fold markings that are on the wing. You notice there's a bunch of letters, those are important, because the instructions are gonna tell you which lines to fold first, second, third, and so forth, based on those letters. But if you cut the wing out, you're gonna cut off the letters, right? Never fear, if you look on the direction page, what do I have there for you? It's the same picture of the wing, and it has the lettering on it, okay? So you can just refer to that. So let me, I'll just hand out some scissors here. So first task is to just cut out the wing and then follow the directions. Oops.
I don't know, should I cut like?
I would argue for cutting along this line so that this stays intact, that will help us to keep track.
Just start cutting over. I don't think we need this table.
So as far as origami goes, this is not really complex origami, and there's only two kinds of folds we're making. We're making what are called mountain folds and valley folds. So valley folds go this way, mountain folds go this way. Got that? Mountain folds, valley folds, okay? Yeah.
Are there any beetles, or are beetles the only insect?
Well, it says heat diffusion
Holds its
equation,
wings,
so I
first of all.
would guess heat transfer.
Are there any beetles that have,
Well, I qualify that. This is the only insect that will do its first fold.
But I don't know if
There are other insects, they bring their wings over the back. They'll do longitudinal folds, so think about like a fan, like a Japanese fan.
these are longitudinal,
Yeah.
these are like pencil.
So there are other insects that will do longitudinal kind of folds, fold off like a fan. Beetles are the only one that's a reverse folding, that will do a mountain fold, short of that, you're getting underneath the electric.
And are there any beetles that have a less complicated system
You have.
folding versus, like, is there a continuum of less complicated versus more complicated?
The dotted
So
lines.
this has to give evolution its fits,
It's solid.
because
So that's the.
there should be, like evolution where the how we got here, there should be less complicated folding gradually.
Yeah, so Peter Prime is just so making them out.
Yeah, but it's even worse than that one.
Okay, alright.
Well, let's talk about that, it's over there. And then, but it doesn't go all the way.
Right, then the scissors, I'll put these back up.
Oh, yeah, no, they converge and. Oh.
Chill, bro, what was that?
said that mountain folds, or valley folds are just mountain folds. That's what he said,
Valley
but
folds a bit harder.
the way around. Yeah.
No, it might be.
Come on, with the engineering.
The other way.
That's why you should know a prime.
And then fold it back. So that.
Wait, it's not a straight line, what the heck? That ain't normal, why is it not a straight line?
You're gonna hate when you see something.
Oh, we're supposed to increase them? No, you fold them in the order.
I can't even see the line.
Is that all of them? Yes.
I think you're going
Looks like it.
right.
Yeah. Maybe not this way. I think it's good.
Well, you can't see the
Now
line
you do a
from the
mountain
outside.
fold on the.
I'm still on step B.
Yeah, thinking you were supposed to be there.
Pretty good on line D, it should be a solid line,
It's
that's
there.
D1, D2, D3, D4, D5 should all be like a straight line.
Do you wanna have it?
DM's gonna wreck you with something.
I like this.
It's close.
Those are everything, so now that we've got these folds established here, think about how the beetle faces this way. We're just using it to push its abdomen, right? So this is where it'd be attached to the body. So can you use your hand like the abdomen to push this, to fold it up?
D line?
Like
And
They meet before the end of the week.
I was gonna say, I hope.
Yeah.
It's
Carl, the one that asked for the croissant.
the line aren't lined up.
Does she know this?
Okay.
It's not even.
Valley folds on line. Mountain fold on the D line.
So it is, it's similar to fireworks
Straight.
I know. Very different.
straight and then it bends.
And to some degree, it's actually different than the exoskeleton because it's a lot more sclerotized.
I'm stubborn than that beetle.
It's like
What we're talking about.
More kind of.
Mount full of you
Scaled up like a
Line done.
with their
Right, right, has, and have, phone memory, shell memory, right?
You need a valley fold on line
I
D.
think,
3 times 3.
I think what we
And the person answered
do with the D line.
6. What did the beetle answer?
1, 2,
9.
3.
But all be lined up when told you didn't step B. Oh, yeah, yeah, but not D.
Yeah.
pretty close.
Does that look like that?
So a valley fold
Wait, how'd you get to the
line.
I don't know.
And oh, it's under there. Do a mountain fold on line
Well,
F.
you're pretty close, you're pretty close. Okay, alright, so now you got it folded up, so now here becomes the real challenge. Okay, so now you've established these creases in here, right?
It's like a curve.
Okay, so now you were able to hold this because you had dexterity on your fingers.
Valley fold on
How did that feel?
Near
Mountain
the front of the, oh, there it is. Valley fold on line G.
So here's where it's attached to the body.
Okay,
So
I can't tell.
can you just
We're supposed to make a valley fold on line
Yes.
D. Would be this line, but do I fold it like?
Somewhere inside there.
Doesn't have any control.
Wait, there, line
there's
H.
one prime.
We need a
Do
mountain
I
fold on
make
line
the
H.
line on? Do I
Valley fold on
do I
line G.
fold E when it's?
So those veins are just like,
That's good.
sort of like a structure.
It's like a leaf.
Well, the veins have an important role.
Oh, and then it says now fold the wing up in the order of those creases that you just.
Innovation has no
And
role to
then
play.
your folded wing should look
So
like.
they can always push out.
Yeah,
You did curve, like if they help spread out, do they like kind of?
Yeah, there we go, okay.
Funky.
So you're using hydraulic pressure.
At least your right hand.
To unfurl the wing.
Yeah. You can take that pressure away and just fold it.
Needle that is attached to you has a curve.
Let me see yours. Is it, did we do it as good?
My right hand.
Wait.
I was about to say, didn't you have
Yours looks a little different than
Here?
Right, well, so there was no
missed the
hydro, remember, there was no hydro.
Did you miss the,
It's a whole new.
the D
Not saving my lip.
So you can kind of like cover the top half.
I think you have to start over.
Here's a banana.
Oh, there you go.
You seen that video?
That's
a great comfort.
Yeah, well, I mean, if I did that my entire
Load
life.
online.
I can pretty darn fast at
Yeah.
The other side?
Okay, see, I'm not slow. You're not faster than the beetle, but I'm not slow.
I am back up roughly.
Oh, no, yeah.
Like if it's not, I guess this would work on the execution.
And even after you unfold it, it's all
Oh, you got it.
Yeah.
All right,
No, I think.
so what do you think?
Got it.
Really easy task, right? Yeah.
I did it with my hand.
You did it with your hand, you made it happen. All right, so this is an interesting thing to think about then, because we're thinking about how do all of these come into play? And there's actually a little bit more to be told here. So first of all, we need to think about wing characteristics. What has to be true about wings in order to be able to fold them, okay? So realize the ultimate purpose for the wing is for flight, right? So we have to have wing venation present in the wing to provide structural support, to provide wing integrity, so when it's flapping the wings, it can maintain that shape to create lift. So at the same time, we have to be able to fold the wing. So in the bottom here, this is a wing from a dragonfly. And look how much wing venation is there. So a highly structurally support wing. Here's the wing you were folding. So really severe reduction in wing venation. So we have to kind of get to this point of optimization where we can have enough wing venation to have wing integrity, but still be able to fold the wing. And we have these inherent creases, so that wing that you started with is not going to stay flat anymore because we have these creases in it. Those creases have to be there to be able to fold the wing, but not reduce flight integrity. What these researchers found out, which is I find incredibly interesting, is that the folding from the left wing versus the right wing are not the same, which is kind of interesting. And they're not even like mirror. They have completely different folds. I just had you fold one wing. The other wing folds in a completely different way. So they are asymmetrical, which is kind of unexpected. When we are dealing with organisms that have bilateral symmetry, you would be thinking whatever's happening on the left side is also happening on the right side, at least in a mirror fashion, right? But it's not in this case. So the other thing is how do you, okay, so we fold the wings up, that protects the wings, but at some point in time I want to use my wings to fly away. They have to be deployed. So some other universities at China and Ohio State University were studying the stag beetle, so a much larger beetle that they could work with to get probes in and things like that. So what they did is they were using fluorescent dyes in watching what's happening in the wing as it deploys. And so realize to deploy the wing, what's happening is these wing veins are being filled with fluid, the hemolymph. So insects have a little bit different body plan than you and I do. We have all of our blood flows around in arteries, capillaries, and veins, yeah? Not so in an insect. In an insect, there are no arteries, capillaries, and veins, except in the wing. So within the body, it's just one big open cavity. There is a heart that will pump blood from the back of the abdomen up to the head, and then it will just flow by pressure from the head back to the abdomen, and around it goes. But there's no arteries, capillaries, and veins, except in the wings. So in order to deploy wings, they have to exert hydrostatic or hydraulic pressure into these wing veins to push them out again. And that's what you're seeing in these pictures here. As we're going through the time lapse, you can see here's the fluorescent dye that's going out into all the different wing veins. And so here they're actually able, this is incredible to me, they actually were able to measure the amount of pressure in the wing veins. So really, really small probes going in there to measure the pressure. And so you can see how the pressure increases, but eventually it does taper off to a certain point. So there's a high exertion of force at the beginning to get them deployed, but they don't have to maintain a high pressure to keep them deployed. Once they're out, they're out. What's interesting though is with other insects, this happens one time in their life. You know, you've all seen the butterfly come out of the cocoon, unfurls its wings. Well, in order to unfurl the wings, they're pumping fluid, hemolymph, into the wing veins, but then the wing dries, and when it's solid, then they don't have to maintain that hydrostatic pressure in the veins at all. In the beetle, they have to be able to do this over and over and over again. Every time they fold up the wings and unfold them, they have to be able to push hemolymph into the wing veins. So then how do they get retracted? So what has to happen? So that elytra needs to come back over the abdomen, and then we reduce the amount of pressure in the wing veins. We don't want to work against the goad here. And then the wings have to get completely tucked in underneath the elytra, and you saw a video of that. Now here's where an interesting thing comes into play that we have to think about. How does a beetle know how to do that? Can it watch itself get the wings under its elytra? No, it can't. So it has to have some pre-programmed behavior, what we call innate behaviors. It doesn't go to wing folding school to learn how to do this. As soon as it comes out of its pupal case, it knows how to fold up its wings. Okay? So just taking a look. So here's the other thing then. So it's one thing to be able to get them to fold into place under the elytra, but now if you're going to be crawling around or whatever, underground or whatever, we want those wings to stay in place. So think about this. Here's a little bit of analogy. I don't know how many of you have ever traveled. You get on an airplane, you got your luggage, right? So let's say you very carefully, neatly pack everything into your suitcase. And you folded everything really nicely, okay, with nice creases in there really nice and tight. But you don't latch the suitcase. What happens? Everything falls out, okay? We've got the same problem with the wings. Okay, it's nice that you could fold them in and get them tucked in underneath the elytra, but we want them to stay there until we need to deploy the wings again. So how does that happen? So again, some researchers at China and Iowa State were taking a look at this question. And they were studying, in this case, they were looking at our famous ladybug. the ladybird beetle, and they were taking a look at this insect in particular. And what they were using was using scanning electron microscopy to be able to take a look at the surface of the wings and see what's going on with the surface of the wings that might help answer this question about how are these wings set in place. And what they noticed is that on the surface of the wings, this is nothing you would just see with the naked eye, but the wings are covered with what are called microtrichia. They're little teeny tiny hairs. And so this is what we're seeing in this image here. So here's the ladybird's beetle's wing, and we're looking at different sections of the wing blown up. And so notice that they have these little teeny tiny hairs all across the surface of the wing. And one of the things we notice is that they're not all going in the same direction. The other thing they noticed was not only does the wing surface have microtrichia, but there are also microtrichia on the underside of the elytra, so it's not just a smooth surface. You see where we might be going here. Think about like Velcro. Okay, but we have the microtrichia on top and microtrichia on the wing, and they're interlocking with each other. And in addition, there are also microtrichia on the surface of the abdomen. So now we've got this sandwich condition. There's stuff on the abdomen, there's stuff underneath the elytra that's interlocking with those microtrichia that are on the wings. So in this diagram, they're kind of showing how this kind of plays out. So here's the surface of the abdomen with the microtrichia going this way. Here's the microtrichia on the inside of the elytra, and then here's the folded wing. And these microtrichia are overlapping and interlocking with each other. So when the wing is folded, it's held in place. How cool is that? But then it even goes further than that, because we've got these two elytra that are going to come back together, right? Well, we need latches on the suitcase. And the elytra have latches on the suitcase. So there is a suture line right here. So you pick up a ladybug sometime, and you'll notice how tightly those elytra are held together. Now, depending on the beetle we're talking about, some of them will have microtrichia on the edges and the margins of the elytra that will hold them together. Some will also have like a tongue and groove relationship between one elytra and the other, so that they will kind of fit together, like tongue and groove boards. So one or either of those mechanisms is going to help hold that elytra in place. So we're holding the wing in place, and we're also holding the elytra in place. So here's the question then. So is it reasonable to explain that all this stuff about wing folding could be explained by evolutionary processes? What do you think? Can we just gradually get here? Well, here's the thing that we need to think about. How many different things had to change about the insect in order to get where we are with beetle wing folding? Are we just changing one thing? No, we're changing multiple things with the wings, right? So here's the thing. So this is Darwin's own admission. He says, if it could be demonstrated that any complex organ existed which could not possibly have been formed by numerous successive slight modifications, my theory would absolutely break down. And later on, Richard Dawkins says this: evolution must be gradual when it is being used to explain the coming into existence of complicated, apparently designed, that's one of his favorite things, apparently designed objects like eyes. Or if it is not gradual in these cases, it ceases to have any explanatory power at all. So can we get here gradually? Well, there's some reasons why we would think this is not the case. and it fails on a number of points. So evolutionary biologists recognize there are some real limitations to evolutionary explanations. The first one is what we call the presence of novel structures, new structures that just seem to appear in the lineage of life. All of a sudden we have this new taxa that has some feature to it, and where did it come from? Okay? And fundamentally, what do we have here? If you get a new structure, how do we explain all structures in living things? What's the source?
DNA.
DNA, right? There's some information, encoded information in the insect's DNA that would have to be there to produce these structures. So the question is, where does new information come from? It seems like evolution can work on existing structures, modify the information that's already there, but where does new information come from? Where do new structures come from? So what do we see here? Well, one, I would kind of point to the elytra. Now this becomes kind of a qualified maybe, because all insects do have a forewing. The only problem is the forewing and the elytra have very little resemblance. So in my mind, I'm thinking this is like pretty doggone new. We're not going to just gradually, step by step, get these hardened forewings. And we don't see any transitional structures. There's no any insects in transition from earlier insects to later insects. It's just all of a sudden we have fully formed beetles, right, with no transitions. So they're not there. Then we have this whole issue with the hydraulic system. Now all insects have a hydraulic system to deploy their wings, but what about this whole idea of going in reverse, releasing the pressure, and then deploying it back and forth, back and forth? And then this whole issue of innate behaviors. Where do these come from? Ostensibly, we'd want to say, well, the innate behaviors in some way are encoded in the DNA, but how did it get there? This is new information, and where does this information come from? The other problem we have is what's called irreducible complexity. Now, this often gets misrepresented. The whole idea behind irreducible complexity is that you have a complex structure that has multiple parts to it. And if you remove one of those parts, that structure has no other function. So the whole idea is if you take something away, if we had a stepwise progression to a current structure, then if we disassembled it piece by piece, what you ended up with by taking one of those pieces away should still be functional. But in this case, we don't have that. So think about this. So we think about the wing size and shape. So if we're suddenly going to have elytra, well, we suddenly need a bigger wing, right? You can't have one without the other. We have to have this reduced wing venation, which realize we're giving something up if we reduce wing venation. How do you get the folds in the wing? I can't fold the wings unless I have all of these things in place. If you take away one of these options here, I don't have the right size wing, I don't have reduced wing venation, I don't have defined wing folds, I don't have the microtrichia on the wings to hold them in place. This whole thing does not work. It's not functional. And then similar to irreducible complexity, we have kind of like chicken and egg kind of problems. So like in the exoskeleton. So there would be no advantage to having an elytra unless you could fold your wings, but there would be no advantage to folding your wing, like you just did here, unless you also had an elytra. So it's a kind of a chicken and egg problem. We also have issues with muscular systems. So we have, and this also ties into innate behaviors. You need to have the right muscular system and innate behaviors built in to fold the wing. You wouldn't have those unless you could fold your wing, but you couldn't fold the wing unless you had those in place. And so then same thing with the nervous system. Then we need to think about information systems that also come into play here. We have all kinds of information feedback loops that are going on to make this happen. So for instance, so we have to have neurons sending and receiving information back and forth between that little insect brain to let the insect know, have I successfully folded up my wing, for instance? Or have I successfully deployed the wing or not? So we have to have these information kind of processing systems that are in place. We have to have the neuronal patterns built into the brain for the innate behaviors. And then bottom line, this becomes a whole other tangent, is where did the DNA information come from in the first place? How do we get, because I don't know, last time I checked, most information comes from where? If I get on my phone here and I Google something and information pops up, where did that information come from? Is it just because electrons were zipping around inside my phone and information just randomly?
It needed to have some external force or external source.
Yeah, and what would that external source be? Let's be very forefront about this.
Other humans.
Okay, some other mind was behind that information. So information, as far as we know it, comes from a mind. So all of these things, really, we can draw back to that whole issue. And then one of the things that people have suggested is another pointer to intelligent agency is just the fact that when we see designs in nature, they actually become inspiration for designs that engineers create. Because what is implicit in that? What's the implication? If you as a designing engineer are going to look at something in nature and then design something, what are we saying about the thing that you were looking at in the first place?
It was already really good.
And how did it get there? It must have been designed. If you're going to copy a design, we're inferring automatically that the thing we're copying was designed, right? So it goes to admission, and so we mentioned with the elytra, material scientists are very, very interested in the elytra. The whole wing folding mechanism has become very, very of interest to engineers who are looking for all kinds of applications for this. Simple things like, how do you fold an umbrella efficiently? Or, like we talked about, satellites, or search robots. So, what are the implications of this thing? How do we decide where this comes from? Because what kind of argument are we using here, first of all? Is this a deductive argument? Slam dunk?
It's inductive.
It's not even inductive.
Abductive.
This is abductive reasoning here. Okay? We're noticing some things with insect beetle wing, right? And what we're putting down is two possible explanations. Evolutionary processes or some intelligent agency that can have forethought, use system engineering, whatever, to make these, instantiate these things in the beetle to make beetles be able to fold up their wings. And so the question is, which one of those explanations is a better explanation? Which one answers the most questions? Now, frankly, on the evolutionary side, what do evolutionary biologists have in explaining how these came about? They'll wave the magic wand and say that it came about by slow, gradual processes, but do they have any evidence for that? There's none. There's nothing that they can point to in the genome or in the fossil record or anything that would demonstrate how we had these slow progressive changes from one form of insect to another to get a beetle to conform its wings, okay? So, oops, hang on. There we go. All right, let's skip that. to skip it again. Why is it's skipping this somehow? Okay, I don't know why it's skipping that. That's weird. All right, so here's the thing that we need to think about when we're thinking about recognizing intelligent agency. So this is where we want to push back against the idea of a God of the gaps argument. So we're not saying, hey, we have no idea how this could have come about by chance, therefore God must have done it. What we're saying is, when we look at things that we know are designed, what kinds of things do they have in common that would tell us it was a designed feature? So if I see a Ford Mustang driving down the road, did I have to see anybody building that to know that it was designed? No. We have a bunch of features in that machinery that tells us that it was designed, and it has these things. It has all of these things. So these are what we would call markers for design. And so if we see these kind of markers for design in human invention, and we see the same kind of markers in nature, what is a better conclusion to draw? I'm suggesting that I think it's reasonable for us to infer that there is an intelligent agent behind these design things. They're not apparent design. They truly are design, right? Now, so let's think about, before we go to questions, so let's think about this as an argument. So we're thinking about, we want to use this to suggest God exists, right? Is it important to know that God exists? Yeah, that's kind of baseline for Christian belief in particular. That's the starting point. So we want to have some confidence. But how does this work for us as an argument? I want to think on two sides here. First of all, let's just think about the believer. Believes in Jesus. Does this help us at all?
I would say so.
How so?
We get to see evidence of the complexity and design of God's creation, and not only does it prove his existence, but if he gives this level of complexity to a basic beetle, what implications does that have for his design of us as humans?
Okay, right. So we're thinking about levels of detail and levels of complexity.
Yes.
Can God be interested in the small details of my life? Well, if he can be interested in the details of microtrichia over the surface of the wing, I think it's fair to say, yes, he can be interested. And what did Jesus say? Jesus said, the Father knows how many hairs are on your head. Right? He knows this level of detail. What else? Just letting you think about that. It's not like there's a right or wrong answer. How does this information help you as a believing person?
Reassurance, I guess.
In what way?
Just reassurance that what I'm believing in actually has something to it.
Okay. Okay. What about God's intervention in creation? Now we look at timelines, if we accept a geologic timeline and how things show up in biological history, everything wasn't made as it is day one. Beetles haven't always been around. They appear in a timeline. What does that tell me?
It says that God God didn't just make everything and then let it be. Like, is it deism that says that?
Right, so this is our pushback against deism, right? That said just God wound everything up and stood back and let everything happen. And then he doesn't have anything to do with his creation. But when we see in the middle of the biological history, something is showing up in biological history that never existed before, and its best explanation is an intelligent agent, which tells me that God is interacting with his creation over time. So what happens to how does that help us with the plausibility of, let's say, oh, I don't know, Jesus coming incarnate and resurrecting from the dead? Does that seem more plausible if we know that this is kind of like God's habit to come in and interact with his creation over time, not just with us, but all of his creation? I think that is very assuring. Well, how about for an unbeliever? Is this helpful or not? What do you think? Is this something you would tell somebody about over lunch tomorrow? That you think would be a good convincer to convince somebody that God exists?
Now that you mention it, it might be.
Might be?
Be a challenge to their thinking that they're taught in school.
Okay, yeah.
It could definitely function very well as sort of an attention hook.
Okay.
Yeah.
Should at least get them thinking,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, like I went to a lecture on beetles yesterday.
And guess what?
And guess what? I'm not just that they're cool, it's that they're so cool that it'd be impossible for them to be this cool without God existing.
Without God.
You know?
Next time you see a beetle.
Just pick it up, pick it apart, and look at its
Yeah.
insides.
Look at all this stuff in here.
What I made yesterday.
So here's what I'll say. So for me, I think this as an argument for the existence of God, to me, is very, very compelling. However, I find that a lot of arguments for intelligent design are not, let's say, very utilitarian. Because what did it take for me to be able to make the case to you?
Evidence,
Huh?
evidence,
Yeah, but
observation.
to what degree?
A lot.
You need to know a lot.
You need to know a lot. You have to have a lot of facts built up to successfully make this case. An intelligent design argument doesn't say, ooh, look at this cool beetle. Ooh. You need a lot more than that. You need to have a lot of information. So I'd say philosophically, as an argument, I think it's very, very compelling. As far as its usefulness in day-to-day traffic and conversation, I think it's harder. Simply because you do have to have a lot of good information to make your case. To say, here we have all of these, chicken and egg problems. In order to be able to hold a wing, you have to have the elytra, you have to have the larger wings, you have to have reduced wing variation, you have to have the microtrichia, and you have to know what you're talking about, right? And so this actually becomes a little bit problematic as an argument. So kind of a good argument, not so good argument. Yeah.
Do you mean because, like, if I'm going to be discussing this with somebody, I have to know a lot?
Yes,
or that
you-
they,
No, they don't have to know, but you do.
and they also have to have the patience to sit there and listen to me explain all this, and I tell you what, most people do not.
No, I think a point well taken. I want a fast answer.
Yeah.
Give me a 3-line argument, point A, B, C, boom. That's all I want, that's all I can tolerate. So this does require some patience to deeply understand something. But in some sense, that's a good thing, isn't it? That if people are going to be dismissive of God's hand in creation, they better know what they're talking about. And a lot of people don't. They don't even know what's out there in the world. So maybe it's a good opportunity to just educate some people and put some weight on their own argument, to not be so quick to be dismissive of intelligent agency as an explanation for what's out there. This stuff isn't just easy to come by, but that requires some instruction, right?
I have gotten some traction out of, I don't know, it feels like an adjacent thing. A lot of people think that science and faith are like oil and water. And just saying something like, I said this once to a group of women, that I have a degree in some kind of biology. I don't remember if I said cell biology or neurobiology, and I'm a Christian. And that stopped everybody in their tracks. 'Cause,
Like how could this be?
yeah, exactly.
How could those things possibly go together? Well, because there is this constant warfare narrative that's going out there, which actually is the false narrative. But people in our culture today have been well trained in that narrative and don't have anything to back that up. It's just what they've been told.
And so this kind of argument pushes against that.
Right. Because we're saying, okay, so here's what science has done. Science has noticed all of these things, and we wouldn't have known it if we didn't do the science. And yet, as we kind of unpeel the layers of what's going on here, we see that, you know, having all of these different things change all at the same time in a just so manner, to get all these things to line up to make beetle wing folding possible, the probabilistic issues become insurmountable, right? All right. So any other questions? Well, thanks for your attention. I hope this was encouraging to you. I'll certainly hang around and talk, but are you doing closing? Yeah.
Alrighty. Yeah, so that was a great conversation. Definitely learned a lot there. No meeting next week. Hopefully you'll remember. Don't show up next week because we will not be here. Yeah, so we'll be sticking around. If you want to talk more, feel free to stay as little or as long as you'd like to. Good luck on exams. I know those are starting this week. I have one Thursday as well. And definitely check out our lending library. There's a lot of booklets there, and we are willing to lend those out to people. And if you wanted to buy one too, we could arrange that as well. There's a lot of great stuff in there, and they're very compact. I've gotten a lot out of the few that I've got, so definitely stick around. If you all bowed your heads with me, I'm going to pray us out. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for Carl's insightful talk this evening. It is certainly very good to delve into even conversations like this, Lord, where we don't have to, maybe know a lot of things, but even in just, everyday life, everyday observations, whether it's a beetle or if it's, just taking us to intelligence design. We are so grateful to know that you are behind every, even insignificant, what seems to us insignificant detail, because you care about those details, Lord, and you work all things together for your purpose, for your glory, and we're so grateful to be able to observe that and to think deeper on these things and to have this time to do that, Lord. So I thank you for this time of fellowship, for just learning and growing in our faith, Lord, and I pray that you will bless everyone here as they go forth this week, and that they will enjoy their weekends and that it'll be restful, and that that you'll strengthen us, Lord, to be lights on this campus, and that we will be able to use this knowledge to spread your word and bring you wherever we go. So I thank you for that in Jesus' name. Amen.
Every argument on their own, you saw it. Yeah.